Earlier this week, Representative Ramirez, of course a Democrat, made headlines for saying that she's Guatemalan before she's an American. Oversight Project President Mike Howell says that she should actually be expelled from Congress, and he joins us right now. So, Mike, obviously, we're not huge fans of Ramirez in the comments, but are they actually grounds for expulsion? Give us your thesis here.
100% they are. It's not even controversial. It's honestly the assertion of the simplest baseline duties of a member of Congress to support the country they're a member of Congress in. And the Congresswoman Ramirez clearly stated on the record in a foreign language, in a foreign country, that she is first a Guatemalan and then an American. And I know, this seems like language we're kind of used to. We're not surprised. A lot of us know that Democrats in the left are for the open borders, for the other countries. You go down the list. But when they say out loud, and without leaving any question, without caveat, without hesitation, something so on the nose and direct as I am a Guatemalan before I am an American, then they cannot serve in the U.S. Congress. And there's a reason why there's not a direct precedent for this. It's because we're lucky enough not to have had this happen too many times before. But in any period of U.S. history, this is immediate grounds for expulsion. And this Congress should move to do it. Of course, the Democrats won't vote for it, but make them wear it. And I want to see Republicans that actually can defend the bare minimum standards. And this is a bare minimum standard.
So it's interesting to me how all of a sudden people are waking up to the fact that this is actually, at the very heart of why you would expel someone from Congress if you're not loyal to your own country. And it seems to me the Democrats sort of walk themselves into this, where all of a sudden people are waking up going, wait a minute, this isn't just about being, a nice, loving diversity or something, from the 90s or 2000s. These are people who are actually saying the quiet part out loud. And that's what's interesting about these lines, because as you know, Mike, there's no way you go back and read the words of George Washington warning us of foreign influence as he leaves the presidency in the farewell address, or all the other founders talking about how we need unity. We have to have people who are loyal to their country. This violates all of that. But what I notice is if she really does represent a place in the United States where 30% of her constituents are foreign-born, there's a sense in which she's representative of the problem throughout the country.
That's 100% right. And to your notes on the founding and the theories that went into the Constitution, it's also written in the text itself. The Constitution contemplates this in many places, whether it's oaths littered throughout, or naming one of three crimes in the Constitution itself as treason against the United States. This is imbued throughout the document, throughout the entire founding. It is an absolute condition precedent to having a working constitutional republic. And that's why this, baseline standard needs to actually be enforced, or else we'll continue to whittle away. But over the decades, we have seen, what started in Clinton era, blue dog Democrats talking about immigration, in different terms. They would pretend to still pander to, we want enforcement in some areas, but generally speaking, we're going to take a different kind of, policy vision for it. But the mask has been dropped slowly and then all of a sudden rapidly in recent years, where no, it's not about an immigration policy. It's about whether to have an immigration policy at all. And that's where we're at in American politics. And that should be so outside what is acceptable in the realm of political debate. It's really a question of whether we have a country or not. And I'll tell you who knows that this is happening. It's countries like Mexico and Guatemala who actively, depend on their people in the United States to advocate for things of interest to those home country. Mexico is the biggest foreign influence vector in the United States by far. It makes a bunch of Russian, Facebook meme chats look like absolute small potatoes, because they are small potatoes compared to the millions of people in this country who have primary allegiance to a country other than the United States and now have political representation in our United States Congress. And so the Congress needs to step up and say, no, this is not acceptable. It's outside the terms, both in the law and the statutes and the rules, but also in the whole theory on what this country should be, a country. And therefore, Ramirez, you got to go. You can't be here.
And Mike, how far can we go with this? Because we have some problems with language in the Constitution. For instance, the use of the word persons instead of citizens. Should we allow individuals or persons with a dual citizenship to even be in Congress? I don't think so, but is that a problem constitutionally? The same thing is extended to the immigration problem. We have the problem of persons versus citizens. The same thing with the census issue that has just come up in the last couple of days, persons versus citizens. How do you see us navigating that?
I think there's room for, reasonable, intellectual, good faith debate about the meaning and application of some of those terms. And that's largely how the United States throughout its history has approached those questions. What is not a reasonable and good faith debate is a representative standing in a foreign country and saying in a foreign language she supports a foreign country first. But obviously on all those issues that you laid out, I think there's an absolutely strong case for the interpretation I think you're leaning towards, and that's where we would end up working through the system of government, up to the Supreme Court for final interpretation, because the facts and history are on our side there. But this is just so outside even entering into that process that it needs to be dealt with on the front end. And, as we noted at the outset, of course, Democrats aren't going to expel her. But if they're going to allow their mainstream political party to be supportive of, having foreign representatives in it, they should be made to wear that, to get on the record and say they're taking this step that is so out of line with the history of the United States, the Constitution itself, that it's not even close to the realm of debate as to meaning of person and its specific application to the more serious arguments we're having today.
So you want, let me see if I get this straight. You want Congress to take a vote and say we need to expel this member. Is that right? And is that it? What else could be done?
Yeah, I'll tell you, we wanted so bad, we wrote the dang resolution for them. We posted it up on X today. We put it in their fancy font with their fancy placeholders, even a little cursive in there for you all who follow the legislation. But yes, we put it out there because we know, it's August. Republicans will do what they always do. They'll pick at her on social media. They'll use it as a talking point. But from where I'm sitting, this gradual sliding of standards over the decades has allowed this behavior to actually become not surprising. No one's surprised that she feels this way. They're only surprised that she was dumb enough to say it out loud and on camera. And so we want Republicans to basically say, no, there are boundaries to these types of things. And some lines are so red and clear, we're going to sit here and draw them. But short of that, clearly, she should not have access to any sensitive information. Clearly, we should not pay for multiple codels to foreign countries, with U.S. taxpayer resources and our dignitaries all around her to trade off information. Clearly, we should deny her every access that office affords to it, because she should not be there. And it's plain and it's simple, and she should frankly go back to Guatemala if she loves it so much.
So where is the line, and where does it need to be drawn when it comes to Donald Trump and the talk this week where he's trying to go through and potentially federalize D.C. law enforcement?
I mean, the line should be right around D.C. turning it into a federal enclave. I think it's pretty cut and dry that D.C., due to kind of, its political leadership, it's, vastly out of step with the rest of the country in terms of, safety and law enforcement. It is an absolute zoo in Washington, D.C. I mean, a lot of focus has gone to the carjacking gangs of youth, and that's obviously problem number one, that's facing the city, is the crime and people getting killed. But it's just decayed everywhere. It's tent city. There are people that are masquerading and calling themselves peaceful protesters that are just harassing people. It's ugly. It's gross. It is unbefitting of a prestigious nation's capital. And it's going to be a huge blight come the 250th anniversary of America. This is when the rooms should be cleaned and, the brass should be, all shiny. And we have our nation's capital that, is honestly one of our worst looking cities in the United States. And the DC Council will never do it. Mayor Bowser or whoever follows her next will absolutely never done it. It hasn't been done under Democratic leadership, and it's never going to be under any sort of competitive political contest or even let alone Republican leadership. It's just a playground for the furthest left of ideas, anti-police, and it's going to get people killed. And so I think it is not only a good idea for President Trump finally to start raising the idea of federalizing it, but it's about time. I would say it's more of a responsibility. He's the president of the United States. His nation's capital looks like and is absolutely disgusting. And so it's the duty of the federal government and the federal city to get it in working order.
So explain this to me, as they say, like I'm a 5-year-old, Mike. What does the federalization of Washington, D.C. actually look like in function? I mean, are we going to see soldiers on the streets instead of the Metropolitan Police and the United States Capitol Police? Will citizens of the United States who have the right to carry their weapons to Virginia, right across the river, will we be able to carry them over into the district at that point? I mean, what does it even look like?
Yeah, well, the first step is getting rid of something called home rule, which allows DC to basically, govern itself and reverting to like the constitutional norm and standard of it being a federal enclave that is controlled by the Fed. So you get rid of home rule and you basically disband the DC Council and you put somebody in charge of Washington DC to manage it. And so as a federally owned entity, federal law would apply to it. And so before I give you advice on where to bring your gun and not, I would say it would basically be like walking into, a national park. It would be governed, under the same kind of theory and construct there. And so you would see, potentially military in Washington, D.C. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, particularly cleaning up and the vast cleanup efforts that are going to be required. The gangs aren't going to love it. And so you're going to need some, people with badges and guns to really enforce the law. But over time, you'll see it kind of reverting to imagine a city in a national park. And with the feds ultimately responsible for it, both not only like in immediate theory, but also politically. It is going to reflect on President Trump's policies if when implemented in Washington, D.C., they actually can clean it up, which of course I think they can.
I was scrolling through your X feed before we did this interview today. You have a hot take on jaywalkers, or just Jayers, as you call them.
Jayers are a huge problem. Okay, obviously the carjackers are big. Okay, for those out there that aren't familiar, you already know what jaying is. You just haven't heard it. Jaywalking is when you walk across the street, not at a crosswalk. We have a whole new problem. Things have gotten so bad in Washington, D.C. We have just jaying. There's no walking. It is just jaying. They stand in the streets, and the police are usually on the sidewalk just watching. You got to drive around them. It makes your commute just absolutely hellacious. It's disgusting, and it's allowed and it's proliferated. So the jayers, when D.C. is federalized, certainly won't get the benefit of the doubt and basically jaying amnesty that DC has given them. But it's, we make light of it, but it's the same thing as these tent cities, these encampments that we've seen. It is broken windows policing that is really needed, where you don't get to needing to make up new terms for types of just, degeneracy in the streets. But the jayers are top of my personal list of grievances that I'd like to see solved.
I just got back from D.C. a couple of hours ago, and I saw this actually outside my hotel window, right there on Capitol Hill. I saw the people standing in the middle of the street. I also actually jaywalked because, when you come to the for instance, the Rayburn building, it's so long and it's so big that there's no crosswalk right to the front door. So I jaywalked yesterday myself, or 2 days ago. But the question I have for you on this same topic is there were some pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel protesters that were protesting outside of the Fox News, NBC News, C-SPAN building. And these protesters were only using noise. They were setting their bullhorns on siren, and then they were banging on pans. Is that a First Amendment protected activity for some reason in D.C.? Because I can't imagine it would be allowed anywhere else. That this would just be, basic, public disruption, but that's all they were doing was making high decibel noise to disrupt what was going on inside those buildings.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it is not a First Amendment protected activity to loiter in the street and harass everybody. We've lost, sight of the definition of actual peaceful protest. And may I remind, even if you cross into civil disobedience, which, Martin Luther King and, Nelson Mandela will be praised for, guess what? The point of civil disobedience was to get arrested. We've lost the arresting part of civil disobedience. We're just letting these people civilly disobey and not arresting them. So we should turn them into martyrs and lock them up and probably throw away the key. But as it relates to, the banging and clattering and all that kind of jazz, I know this all too well. I know exactly the area you're talking about. They're breaking, we've gone to the code. There's a certain decibel limit you're not allowed to exceed. Not that we even need to get to that point because they shouldn't be there in the first place. They're clearly exceeding the decibel limit. Oftentimes, I've seen the people with those, megaphones blasting them into people's eardrums. We had one of my friends had to go to the ER because his eardrum basically had a megaphone blasted into him. These things border on violent all the time, and then they get violent. We had someone pepper sprayed in the face who was a security officer not too long ago. People have been kicked, spat on, stalked, and just the most vulgar and outrageous things. It is not legal. It's not peaceful protest. And I'll tell you what makes this worse. The area you're pointed to, they're probably staged out of those tents right in front of Union City, because there's a bunch of tents there where they all have their little protest bonanza parties. Those things are permitted by the Trump administration's National Park Service. We have gone to them and said, you are allowing a permit to a non-peaceful protest that has resulted in hospitalizations, assaults, decibel violations, all of these lists of things. Here's your executive order from the president saying you are going to clean up Washington, D.C. Now here's talking about revoking home rule. What are you doing giving these people a permit? I mean, can't we start with the small stuff? We've climbed the escalation ladder, as I like to call it, here in Washington, D.C. Honestly, the only person left for us to complain to, if we can get a window with him, would be President Trump himself. But just revoke those permits. It's ridiculous.
We love a fired up Mike Howell. I know you're not running for office, but I'm telling you, like, if this was the party platform that you were running on for 2026, I'd be like, sign me up. No jaying, Mike Howell, no jaying.
Thanks for having me, and I'm very disappointed in Steve Baker, who slides into jaywalking. But, like broken windows police, and you get rid of the jayers, other people think they got to follow the law as well.
Thanks so much, Mike. We'll see you again next time.